All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at a Gen 1 B58's timing chain setup. A lot of you guys probably heard when the B58 first came out that a big concern was that the timing chain was in the back of the engine. And now that I've gotten the unique opportunity to kind of open it up and take a closer look at the timing chains, I was just kind of curious, how bad is it really? How hard is it to access? What does it really take? What do you have to take apart? And knowing the kind of position of it, I felt like, at least in my situation, I would be able to uncover maybe some kind of detail or something that makes it easier than it looks. So let's go ahead and take it apart, take a look at the timing chain and kind of how all of it is set up. And hopefully you guys find this video useful. So if you haven't seen my previous videos, we're working on a B58 engine that came out of my 2016 340i. I bought it from Copart with engine issues, but instead of fixing it, I decided to test my luck. And after making over 600 wheel horsepower for the past several years and a bunch of weekends of track abuse, unfortunately, my luck ran out. So I'm tearing down the engine to find out what went wrong, and in the process, I'm making videos like this one to take a deep dive into some of the engine's internals. So check out the playlist in the video description for all of the videos I've made, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this in the future. So for those that don't know, the timing chain is at the back of a B58 engine. It's actually sandwiched between the engine and the transmission, so the first thing you'd need to do is remove the transmission if you want to access the timing chains. Now I've also removed the oil pan, and in my case you can see that I have the whole engine removed, so obviously this process is a little bit easier for me. And FYI, even in the BMW manual, it specifies that the first step is removing the engine, but just kind of keep all of this in mind in case you were wanting to try to do this while the engine is still mounted in the car. The next step is to remove the flex plate, or if you have a manual transmission, remove the flywheel. It's held in with 8 19mm bolts. Then I also removed the crank position sensor since it is seated inside of the timing cover. This isn't probably 100% required, but I just wanted to make sure I could avoid damaging it. It's held on with one 4mm screw on the side, and once you remove that, it just slides out. Like most of my videos, you're watching me do this for the first time, and it seemed pretty easy at this point. But after removing the 11 screws on the face of the timing cover and the one screw on top of it next to the cylinder head, I was prying and prying, but I just couldn't get the timing cover off. That's when I realized that I'd need to remove the valve cover, which wasn't fun to do with the engine on the hoist. I actually had to drop the engine back down to get enough slack in the chains to pull the valve cover off. But you can see underneath the cover there are 2 additional bolts that you need to remove underneath the valve cover that go through the cylinder head. So yes, you have to remove the valve cover as well as the oil pan in order to get the timing chain off. So after I got those off, then it was much easier. I was able to pry off the cover. There are a few choice locations that give you a little extra leverage, so look around for a lip sticking out from the cover a little bit, and that will help you pry it off. And then once it gets off of the dowels, it should be pretty easy to remove. And here's what the timing cover looks like on the inside. Nothing really crazy going on here. All right, so this definitely took a little more work than I originally anticipated. I don't know really what my thought process was, but I figured at least if I could just take this cover off, we could see majority of what's going on. The valve cover coming off gives us a lot more access, but I didn't consider that the cover for this actually has 2 bolts that need to be accessed from on top of the cylinder head anyway, so that's why the valve cover had to come off. I guess it is what it is. I don't really know what BMW was thinking with this setup. I think a part of it is supposed to help with some kind of engine balancing or balancing weight in the car and rotational masses and things like that. But it's definitely an extremely complicated setup. So as you can see, we've got 3 different chains. This one drives the oil pump that's down here, and yes, we will be taking this off and taking a look at the internals, so stay tuned for that if you're curious about Gen 1 oil pumps. After that, we've got the secondary chain that just goes to a sprocket that drives a 3rd chain that goes up to the cams. Again, I don't get the purpose of this. I tried to dig deeper into the tech manual and figure out why this was added. Obviously, it's not needed because on Gen 2s they removed this and the timing chain just goes from the cams directly to the crank. So for whatever reason, this was initially added. but we're gonna go ahead and take that off, get all the chains off, and take a closer look at that as well. So because of that, we've got two tensioners. So this is the primary tensioner. This is the one that you access if you're swapping cams and stuff like that. Really easy to access from outside of the engine. Over here from like the downpipe area, you just get a long extension and then you can unscrew this. It just screws into the cylinder head and uses oil pressure built up in these oil valleys to keep pressure on that. Now this one, if you have an issue with this one, so help you, may God have mercy on you, because this is going to be fun to access. This entire chain assembly would be fun to access. I'm also thinking about, with this chain on the oil pump, you're at least going to have to remove this oil pump gear in order to get these chains off, because even if you remove it all, the secondary one is behind the oil pump chain, and so you won't be able to get that out, I don't think, without removing this sprocket. At least at most you have to remove the entire oil pump assembly. So yeah, it is what it is. But again, we're going to go ahead and start taking this stuff apart. I'm just curious. I want to see how it all works. Also, it gives you a little more insight as to why you have to time all of this the way that you do, because if you guys saw my cam install video, I showed you guys how you have to time it, and this is actually a keyed crank. So if you put the flex plate on here, let me see if I can grab it. So yeah, as you can see, the flex plate is keyed. So that is keyed so that it can actually locate on here only one way. So when you're finding this hole to locate top dead center, it's always going to be in the same spot. So that's also interesting because, you know, the flywheel has to match the crank so that you can locate this at top dead center and then put the guides on top that lock the cams in place for those to be at top dead center. And then that is what actually orients everything. So the timing chains themselves really just turn it all. It does nothing to actually locate them because there are so many interactions here. You don't want to have to spend all the time trying to line up all the gears and timing marks and stuff like that. So it's cool, at least once you remove these Vano sprockets, that you can actually just locate everything, tighten it all down, and then it's in time. You're not actually trying to turn it all into a specific orientation before snapping the chain in place. So I guess from that aspect, it's nice because the chain is going to be a headache to deal with if that were the case. Now, just because I was curious, I kept going with removing the timing chain components. The lower timing chain tensioner is the one I'm more familiar with, and this style is something I've had on previous engines. The piston pushes out on the chain and it's held on with two E-torque screws. The manual says that you want to pry it back into position, so push the piston in as far as possible, and then install a locking pin tool that will keep the piston in place. But I didn't have the tool or the pin that would fit in the hole properly, and it was really hard to push the piston all the way in, so I just kind of removed the bolts and pulled it off. The other tensioner for the upper chain is screwed into the side of the block. You'll need a 21mm socket to remove it. With it not mounted on anything, it had too much torque holding it in place, so I ended up having to use my impact to get it off. And it looks like we've got a couple Torx bits to get these guides off. The guides are plastic. They don't look like they have any like metal reinforcement or anything, so really just oil lubricating them to prevent them from wearing. But I know a lot of people are nervous about timing chain issues and having to replace the timing chain, and even though this is a pretty stupid design, let me make sure you can see me say this is a stupid design, but this really shouldn't be something that you have to replace. It doesn't indicate that there are any inherent issues. There are a bunch of B58s with hundreds of thousands of miles on the stock timing chain, so in theory, as long as you own the vehicle, this should be fine. But if at whatever point, I don't know, 500,000 plus miles, if this were to start rattling, I think you would hear it. It would be pretty noticeable being right by the firewall. But these guides seem to be in perfectly fine shape. If you use good oil, it should be fine. Then each of the timing chain guides are held in with dowels that kind of prevent them from moving laterally. So you just need to use a Torx bit to remove the dowels, and then the guides can come out as well. And I think I'm just now realizing something. So there's a guide right here. We'll remove this to get the guide at least loose and out of the way. But there's another guide over here, and I wasn't sure where it's screwed in. It's these two bolts. Let me see. Yep. So there's a bolt up here and a bolt back here. At least these you should be able to access without removing the valve cover, but obviously you got to remove the valve cover to get to that point anyway. But I guess they give this as a consolation prize, because imagine if the bolts were like in here, like these, against the actual head inside here. So these they put on the outside, thankfully, and that'll get those guides off. Now this is about the point where I stopped, because I realized I'd need to remove the Vanos central valves to get the cam gears off, and it was getting close to my bedtime, so I just decided to call it a night. But it was cool to see the chains and how everything was lined up. It just gives you a better frame of reference for what's going on back there. Still not sure why BMW decided that it should be in the back, but it's cool to look at nonetheless. Well, I'm losing interest in going further, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight on how the timing chains look and work on a Gen 1 B58. Again, on the Gen 2, all of this is significantly simplified because they've gone with, you know, like a single timing chain design. So it's just this one chain that comes down to the crank. But on the Gen 2, somebody had this genius idea to make it this much more complicated and add an intermediate sprocket, and that's where this guy comes in. But, you know, in theory, to remove the chain, you'd have to, again, take off the trans, take off the valve cover, take off this back cover, then remove the tensioners, and then pull the chains off. So not a fun job, not something that I would want to have to do for sure, but it is at least interesting to look at in person versus just pictures on the internet. So again, we'll continue with this teardown. We're going to take off the oil pump. We're going to take off all of this cooling stuff and talk more about how our thermostat works and things like that. Then we'll take the head off and inspect the actual engine. But if there's anything else you guys want to see, let me know. Obviously, I've got my free will with this one, so I can do whatever I want and hopefully use this to make the entire engine swap a little more worth it. So this was cool, beginning deep dive into my engine. I've still got it over here on the hoist, so obviously more videos are coming soon as I tear into the other things and then finally open up the engine to figure out what went wrong. So stick around for more in the future, but for now, that's it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.